I am sure you have heard the stories of people being denied entry into the US or having their visas revoked because of what they have on their social media, what they have on their phone. And Customs and Border Patrol sometimes have access to your devices when you're trying to come into the US. Let's talk about it. I am U.S. immigration attorney Lilian Chukwurah, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. Now, when it comes to immigration, the right to privacy is not guaranteed, especially when you're trying to enter the US. This is the place where Customs and Border Patrol has the most power. They have the right to search your phone and other electronic devices. It is up to CBP officer that you meet whether they want to see your phones or not. They usually have something that may trigger them to ask to see your phone. So, if you're in that situation, let's talk about what happens and how it actually happens. So you come into the US, you fly in, you're at the airport, you're going through security, you get to the customs officer. They look through your paperwork. They may ask you one or two questions about your reason for coming into the US, or if you're a permanent resident, they may ask you about your travels outside of the US. At that point, if there's anything that raises kind of a red flag for the officer, they may ask to see your phone or electronic devices. If they do ask to see your phone or electronic devices, you have the option to say, yes, sure, here you go, or you can refuse. Now, in order for them to search your devices without your consent, they need to have something called reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion gives an officer, a law enforcement officer, the right to stop and frisk, basically to investigate further if there is more evidence of a crime being committed or a law being broken. So if the officer does not have reasonable suspicion, they cannot search the device without your consent. Now, if you say no to them searching your device, that can be used as the reasonable suspicion for the officer to search the phone without your consent. So you see how this is just cyclical, right? If you say yes, they search the phone. If you say no, they use the fact that you said no as the reason why they can search the phone without your consent. If you are in a situation where this happens, you get to decide whether to hand over the device or not. Now, let's talk about what kind of messages or information in your phone or electronic devices that can cause the officer to have reasonable suspicion that you may be doing other things that violate your status. So typically, when you are coming into the US and you are, for example, you applied for a tourist visa, you got your tourist visa, and now you're coming in on that visa. The officer at the airport is trying to make sure that you are actually coming into the US for what you say you're coming in for. Okay? So if they look at your phone and they see things on there that do not line up with the reason that you're coming to the US, guess what? You are not coming into the US, right? That gives them reasonable suspicion. Again, if you give them consent, they don't need reasonable suspicion to search your phone, but to deny you entry, they're going to need some reason, right? And your phone can give them that reason. So some of the things that can lead to someone that has a visiting visa to the US or a non-immigrant visa, so not a visa that leads to a green card, just a temporary visa. If you have one of those and you're trying to come into the US, these are the things that will raise a red flag on your phone, okay? So if you are supposedly coming here for a short stay, but you are also planning to get married in the US to a US citizen and they can see that on your phone, red flag, okay? If you are planning things, activities for times that are beyond your period of stay. So for some visas, you may only get 6 months in the US and you are planning, a New Year celebration that's a year out, right? That's beyond just 6 months. And that is going to raise a red flag if they see that kind of conversation on your phone. If you are looking for a job or, sending messages about a job when you have a visa that does not allow you to work, red flag, okay? If you are doing any sort of banned activity for your visa type. For example, if you have a student visa, but you are applying for jobs off campus without the school's permission, that is a red flag, right? That's something that is banned activity for your type of visa. If you have a B2 visa and you are planning on staying beyond your period of stay, or you are applying for a job, that is something beyond, what your visa allows, right? That's something banned by what your visa allows. You're not allowed to work in the US if you are here temporarily without a work authorization, right? A B1, B2 visa does not give you a work authorization. So therefore, you have no business planning a job or applying for jobs while you're here for a short stay. Okay? So all of those things matter. So before 2025, that's where this video would have stopped, right? That's where I would have stopped. Is if you're doing beyond activities, if you're planning on getting married, if you're staying beyond your period of stay, if you're trying to find a job, or, discussing when you're going to start working, things like that. Or even if you're, pregnant and coming into the US for the sole purpose of having a baby, that's also a banned activity. So before 2025, that's where I would have stopped. But no, that is no longer the case. Now you also have to worry about your social media posts about anything that criticizes the US government or their foreign policy, or something that can be seen as going against the US foreign policy and their allies. And we have seen this happen in recent months. So it's not unthinkable that this is going to happen. Your social media posts are now going to be used against you. And if an officer has reasonable suspicion to look through your devices and they see posts like that supporting certain organizations or supporting certain countries, or, criticizing certain countries or certain actions, those things can lead to you not being allowed to enter the US and can lead to your visa being revoked. So it's really important that not only do you keep an eye on everything else, but that you also know that your messages, your Facebook posts, your social media posts can also be used to look at what you are posting that could potentially be against US foreign policy. Now, that was for tourists and non-immigrant visa holders. Now let's talk about permanent residents. We have seen permanent residents be, stopped or had their phone looked through. And let's talk about what that looks like for permanent residents. What are the things that an officer can see on your phone that can cause them to have red flags? Now, as you know, a lawful permanent resident is a lawful permanent resident unless an immigration court judge takes it away from you. Okay? So this does not mean you are denied entry into the US. It may mean that you end up in deportation proceedings as a permanent resident. Okay? So really important that we have a distinction between people that have a non-immigrant visa and people that are permanent residents of the United States. The rules are a little different and the things that apply are a little different. But is it possible for an officer to put someone in deportation proceedings based on what they find on their phone? Yeah, absolutely it's possible. Okay? Now, let's discuss what messages or information can cause an officer to have a red flag when it comes to permanent residents. Permanent residents are a little different. Obviously, they are permanent residents of the United States from non-immigrant visa holders. So the rules are going to be different, because if you're a permanent resident and you have things like, I'm looking for a job, or, oh, I have a job interview tomorrow, that's not going to be a problem, right? That's not going to raise red flags, because you're a permanent resident. You're allowed to live and work in the US. But if you have things like sex for money, aka prostitution, right? If they can see in your devices that you are discussing or making arrangements to, engage in that activity, that is a red flag that can cost you dearly, because they have reasonable suspicion that you are attempting or will be engaging in prostitution, which can make you deportable. Okay, which can make you deportable and can lead to an officer issuing you a notice to appear. So really important. These things happen. Okay, there's a reason they're on the list, because they happen. Okay. The other one related is arranging for two other people to engage in sexual activity for money. Right? That's like the pimp situation, right? Where you are arranging for other people to have sex for money and you are getting a cut of it. So, engaging in prostitution, procuring prostitutes for someone, are things that's going to make you deportable. Remember when you filed your I-485, there's a question on there that says, have you ever engaged in prostitution? And you said no. Do you plan on engaging in prostitution? And you said no. Do you remember that? Right? You answered those questions. So now, if they are seeing on your phone that you are engaging in that activity that you said you weren't going to engage in, that's going to make you deportable. And you will now have to deal with an immigration judge and have to explain, oh, that's not really what that is, right? Maybe you are, joking with your boyfriend or whatever. The officer doesn't know that. And they may not even ask you to explain. So what's on your phone matters. Another one is if you are actively discussing criminal activity on your phone. Okay? Again, the officer may not have all the context, but if they suspect that you are planning criminal activity, they can use that against you. Okay? And then for 2025, we're going to add criticizing the U.S. or U.S. foreign policy. Yes, the same rules that apply to non-immigrant visa holders also apply to lawful permanent residents now, because apparently the First Amendment is no longer applicable, right? Your First Amendment rights are out the door. At the airport, sure. Inside the U.S., apparently. So you want to avoid anything that would look like you are criticizing the U.S. or U.S. foreign policy or U.S. allies and their actions. Okay? So those are the things that can lead to red flags. Let's talk about what you can do. Okay? I know that was a lot of, if you do X, Y, and Z, you can end up deported or, have your visa revoked. We talked about that. Now let's talk about what you can actually do to avoid these red flags, right? One, don't do stupid stuff on your phone. I'm sorry, but some of the things that I have seen people have on their phone, especially when it comes to criminal activity, is ridiculous. So if you are going to be stopped by an officer and the officer is looking through your phone and they see stuff in there that's dealing with criminal activity, are you dumb? Like, I am really sorry, but you should not have those things on your phone. You should not be doing them in the first place, but definitely not on your phone. Secondly, you want to make sure that you review. Now, seriously, right? You want to make sure that you are reviewing your messages and posts for the red flags. So your text messages, things that can be misconstrued. So like I said before about the prostitution thing, you maybe, have an inside joke with your best friend or your boyfriend or whoever. The officer is not going to know that it's an inside joke. So if there's things like that that could be misconstrued, you may want to take it off your phone. Okay? Your social media, the same thing. Make sure things are not, criticizing or public and things like that. If you are a non-immigrant coming into the US, you should not have anything on you or anything on your devices that could be mistaken for you wanting to stay in the US for longer than you said you were going to stay. So I have seen people literally travel to the US with a wedding dress while they are here for, a short visit. They never disclosed that they had a US, fiance. They never disclosed that they have a boyfriend in the US, but they're traveling to the US with a full wedding gown. I'm sorry, that's going to raise a red flag. And then if the officer looks at your phone and sees that you're planning a wedding and you've been planning it for a while and you lied to the officer that did your interview by saying that you didn't know anyone in the US, especially if you did not disclose your fiance or boyfriend or girlfriend or whoever, that's going to raise red flags. So you really want to be careful what you're doing, how you're doing it, and be aware that anything you have on your device, if an officer is able to access your device, can see it and can use it against you, okay? In most situations, they will use it against you. So you really want to be careful what you have on your device when you're going through an airport. Like I said, the right to privacy is virtually non-existent when you're trying to enter the US. The officers have wide discretion on whether to search you or your devices. So make sure that you are staying safe and that you are being smart, okay? You are being smart about what you have on you, what devices you have on you. For immigration lawyers traveling internationally, we are very much aware that some of us work while we're on vacation. Y'all may not think so, but we work while we're on vacation and we may have our laptop on us, our work phone on us, and we have to be aware of these same things as well, because an officer can search a US citizen's devices. But for us that are immigration lawyers, right, for lawyers in general, there's something called attorney-client confidentiality, right? We cannot disclose client information without the client's consent. So if we happen to have our client's devices, devices that have client information on it, we also have to be careful when we're going through airports, because again, CBP officers have wide latitude when it comes to searching devices at airports, especially when they have reasonable suspicion to think that a criminal activity may be happening. Again, you saying no to them searching your phone can be the thing that gives them reasonable suspicion. So we have to be careful. So definitely you want to be careful as well. And we take steps to make sure that we are protecting our clients and their privacy. So you need to make sure that you are taking steps to actually make yourself not a target and not a red flag when you are coming into the US. If you have any questions about US immigration or want to see if you qualify for a change of status, adjustment of status, or citizenship, please feel free to reach out to me and schedule a strategy session. You can do that by going to my website, lilylegal.com, and clicking on Contact Us to schedule that strategy session. It is a 15-minute free session where we talk about your situation and see if we can come up with a plan to get you from where you are to the status that you want, which is typically a green card or citizenship.